When you think about UK politics, you probably picture two heavyweights in a ring, right? You've got the Conservatives in the blue corner, Labour in the red. And for decades, yeah, that's pretty much been the main event. But is that really the whole story anymore? Let's dig in.
So that's the big question we're tackling here. Is the UK still a classic two-party system? Or is the game changing? Are these two giants the only real players? Or is the field getting, a lot more crowded with some serious contenders? Okay, before we dive any deeper, let's just get the terminology straight. A classic two-party system, well, it's exactly what it sounds like. Two major parties dominate everything and have a real shot at winning. But in a multi-party system, things are way more spread out. And keeping that difference in mind is absolutely key to understanding what might be happening in the UK right now.
So let's start with one of the big ones, the Conservative Party. The thing you have to understand about them is that they've basically got two competing souls inside one body. It's this constant balancing act between sticking to tradition and pushing for some pretty radical change.
And you can see that internal conflict right here. On one side, you have what's called one nation conservatism. It's this traditional idea that's all about social responsibility, pragmatism, looking after institutions like the NHS. But on the other side, you've got the legacy of Thatcherism, a really ideological free market vision that's all about a smaller state and individual enterprise. It's a real tug-of-war for the heart of the party. And honestly, this tension has defined their entire modern history. I mean, you can trace this line of leaders from the revolutionary approach of Margaret Thatcher all the way to more pragmatic figures like Theresa May. Every single one of them had to somehow navigate and balance these two powerful competing ideas just to stay in power.
All right, let's switch gears and talk about the other giant, the Labour Party. Their story recently has been one of just massive evolution, especially after the 2008 financial crisis kind of forced everyone to rethink, well, everything.
Under Jeremy Corbyn, the party took a really sharp turn to the left. This was a huge break from the whole New Labour era of Tony Blair, which had kind of made peace with free markets and a more assertive foreign policy. Corbyn's platform was a complete reset. We're talking more public spending, an end to austerity, and a foreign policy that was firmly against military intervention. It wasn't a tweak, it was a total change of direction.
But here's the thing. This whole story isn't just about red versus blue anymore. For years now, other parties have been chipping away at that old setup, really challenging the dominance of the big two.
Now, the most established of these challengers have always been the Liberal Democrats. For decades, their whole brand was being the sensible, moderate, third force in British politics, the go-to alternative for voters who are just tired of the same old arguments.
If you look at their leaders over the years, you can see their journey. You had people like Paddy Ashdown and Charles Kennedy who really built up the party's credibility. And all that work eventually led to Nick Clegg taking them into a historic coalition government back in 2010.
But wow, power came at a staggering cost. Just look at this chart. It shows a total collapse. After 5 years in government with the Conservatives, the Liberal Democrats were absolutely decimated in the 2015 election. They went from 57 seats all the way down to just 8. A brutal, brutal lesson in the risks of political compromise.
That collapse of the Lib Dems left this big political vacuum, and that really opened the door for new challengers to tap into all that voter frustration. You saw parties like UKIP, with its laser focus on leaving the EU, and the Green Party, all about environmental and social justice, start to get real traction by hitting voters with these very specific, very powerful messages.
So, with all these internal battles and outside challengers, is the old system really breaking down? Is that two-party dominance actually a thing of the past? Well, let's look at the hard data.
This graph pretty much tells the whole story. If you go back to the 1950s, Labour and the Conservatives were regularly pulling in over 90% of the vote combined. 90%. But as you follow that line forward, you can see a really clear downward trend. Those old loyalties are definitely breaking apart.
So, what's the bottom line? Well, this quote sums it up perfectly. Yeah, the two big parties still dominate the corridors of power at Westminster. They're still the ones forming governments. But that grip, that duopoly, is just nowhere near as secure as it used to be. You can really start to see the cracks.
And all of this leaves us with one last thing to think about. In this new, shifting landscape, what's the real key to victory? Is it all about having a popular, charismatic leader? Is it having a party that's disciplined and united behind you? Or is it simply about having the most powerful ideas at exactly the right moment? The answer is probably a mix of all three. And figuring that out is what's going to define UK politics for years to come.